Welcome on Texas Football, a little afternoon edition. CJ and I have some news for you. Silas Bolden, wide receiver out of Oregon State, expected to make a Texas visit this weekend. We mentioned him on this morning's Coffee and Football that he said he picked up an offer from the Longhorns over the weekend. Now we're hearing that he's actually scheduled an official visit to Texas for this weekend. CJ, what can you tell us about the smaller wide receiver for Oregon State? But he looks and plays a lot like Xavier Worthy. I mean, he's got those jets.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The jets is absolutely the number one thing that comes to mind when you talk Silas Bolden. A guy with elite change of direction ability and breakaway speed, something that, you know, when you watch his highlight tape at Oregon State, it jumps off the tape or jumps off the screen in the sense that he can run away from just about any coverage. He creates separation very easily. And with the ball in his hands, he's very exciting to watch. So the explosiveness, the change of direction, and obviously the quick one burst and go kind of ability for Silas Bolden are all things that are exciting and intriguing and what Texas is looking at right now when evaluating him. So very encouraging. I think there's a double move that he actually made against UCLA that it was astounding. Just how quickly he was able to create separation. Very impressive. Exactly what Texas is looking for in the sense of getting a guy on the field to be an instant big-time playmaker right away.
I'll say this. I watched his game versus Utah. He had like 7 minutes worth of highlights just versus Utah. And he definitely is a downfield receiving threat, plays the ball in air, maybe a little bit better than Xavier, but he's not as tall as Xavier. And I'm not sure anybody in this they're going to find in the portal is faster than Xavier Worthy. Of course, Bolden, not the only portal transfer Texas is tracking right now. We reported earlier today that Texas and Jamari Caldwell, the defensive tackle out of Houston by way of Newberry, South Carolina, is expected to make a decision soon. I was told he's, quote, on the cusp of making a decision, whether that's today, tomorrow, the next day. I'm not quite sure. Texas and Oregon going mano a mano right now, it sounds like, for a guy that may be the number one defensive tackle in the NCAA transfer portal overall. Caldwell just visited Texas over the weekend. It came in Saturday night, left Sunday. Also on campus over the weekend, wide receiver CJ Daniels. We just talked about Silas Bolden, a wide receiver, Liberty transfer. CJ Daniels, originally from the state of Georgia. He was also on Texas campus. Texas feels good about this, despite the fact that his former head coach at Liberty, Hugh Freeze, is now at Auburn. He also visited Florida as well. What are you hearing, or what are we hearing behind the scenes, CJ, with CJ Daniels?
Yeah, it'll be a Texas and Auburn decision in my eyes. I know there was a visit to Florida as well over the weekend that split kind of the two of those visits, but the visit went well for Texas. He was able to check out the facilities, obviously got suited up. We saw the little SEC logo on the number or on the jerseys from his visit as well. So that's exciting. I know Texas Twitter loved that, but a bit of a different player than Silas Bolden and a bit of an intriguing aspect to take into consideration when looking holistically at how Texas is approaching their portal receiving search. Because CJ Daniels is probably 6'2". You know, he's a bigger body. He has close to 1,000 yards receiving, but he's up in that range of about 20 yards per reception, which is an astounding number. When you can come to consider that he was north of 50 receptions this season, found the end zone 10 times. So both of these guys have the big playability. I think for Silas Bolden, if you start to consider the size, you don't necessarily consider the down the field threat, but that's how both of these players were used and are seen by the Texas staff. So I think that's encouraging to begin with. Regardless, Bobby, Texas is looking to add one more receiver to this bunch. They need a guy that they know can step in and play at a top-tier level at the wide receiver position to help Quinn Ewers out in year 3, to continue that kind of production that we've seen from 2023 into 2024 when the competition will be ramped up just a little bit on a week in and week out basis.
Well, I mentioned that, and they are looking at guys almost exclusively that have a lot of production. Daniels, 55 catches, Bolden, 54 catches. Dorian Singer had over 1,000 yards at Arizona 2 years ago. At USC this year, he did not have as big a year, but he's a tall, big receiver that has great hands, wins a lot of 50-50 balls. And then there's LeJontay Wester, a wide receiver / punt returner out of Tom Herman's Florida Atlantic that had over 1,000 yards receiving this year. There is a group of receivers that Texas is monitoring and talking to. Bolden coming in as of right now this weekend. But I'm here to tell you that others could enter the portal at some point in time too, that still might be out there. We'll see, that have Texas ties. We'll see if they actually do go in the portal, what the actual outcome is. But to your point, Texas taking, again, a strategic approach in the portal. They add, right now, they got the 3 guys from the portal, Andrew Makuba, Matthew Golden, and Trey Moore. All of them have multi-year starting experience. I think they're going to go for that again when it comes to receiver to try to fill that void. Texas right now, as far as NFL declarations, CJ, Adonai Mitchell announces that he is headed pro. That's been what's expected for the last month or two at least. I know there was some thought that he might actually stay around, but his decision amplifies the need for Texas to go and find another receiver in this class.
It absolutely does. And it has to be a guy with a reliable set of hands and the ability to make big plays. You know, that was kind of almost the downfall of Texas in its entirety, was the reliance on A.D. Mitchell to go make a big play. You know, kind of bit Steve Sarkisian in the rear at that last goal line drive, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of what Texas, got Texas to that point with Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and A.D. Mitchell, is the big play reliance in the first place. So they're going to have to replace a lot of production, a lot of targets, and a lot of guys who could seemingly make magic out of nothing. So I think that is what, obviously, we've talked about C.J. Daniels and Silas Bolden, but LeJontay Wester and Dorian Singer, 2 other guys who are really good at creating a lot out of nothing. And we've seen that with 2 1,100-yard seasons for each of them in each of the last year or 2 respectively. So a lot of production, a lot of opportunity. And I think that is kind of what is being attractive right now for these portal wide receivers to Texas, is you have a third-year quarterback in a wide receiver-friendly system, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity there for you. So for Texas,
3 open starting spots too.
100%.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. So a lot of targets to go around in a very friendly system on a big stage where you just competed for a college football playoff spot. I think that is almost the best of all worlds right there if you're a portal wide receiver looking to make that next jump.
Before we get into Jahdae Barron, I want to talk a little bit about him. I did mention Adonai Mitchell going pro. A couple other guys to be aware of. Kendrick Blackshire, a linebacker out of Alabama, started for the Crimson Tide this year. He's originally from Duncanville. He has actually entered the portal. The question I have now is, if David Benda returns, does Texas have a spot for Kendrick Blackshire, in your opinion? Or is that a good question maybe that the Texas coaches are going to have to think about here?
I think it's worth asking, because when you watch the 2 of them, there's not a whole lot of separation from their skill set perspectives. Kendrick Blackshire was obviously the kid, back to it in his high school days. He went viral for just the physical stature and kind of the freakness, if you will, in terms of what he looked like on and off the field. He's 6'3", about 225, and he's been that way since he was about 14 or 13 years old. So that's obviously great. Playing for Alabama, very, very impressive as well. But when you watch the film, he's not great going backwards. He's not great in coverage. And I see a lot of that in what David Benda already brings to the table. So there's, it's worth the conversation of whether or not, do you take 2 similar kind of linebackers when you have an Anthony Hill, you have a Leon Galafau who's expected to make that next leap? Do you feel comfortable enough in that linebacking room right now where you have to take a piece for depth regardless? That's kind of where we are right now. I know we talked about Jelani McDonald actually making that move to safety during bowl prep. He was kind of that guy on the fringe, kind of on the fence, whether or not where he would be at a nickel spot in the box at linebacker or back deep at safety. It does look like he will not be in the linebacking room for 2024. So if that is the case, losing Jalen Ford is a big piece for that Texas linebacking room. If they need another guy, Kendrick Blackshear in that David Benda kind of extended role would make sense in my eyes.
I said he was a starter. He was not a starter. He played a lot, though. Ended up, I think, with 17 tackles on the season. He was a full-time player for them, but was not a full-time starter for Alabama, just to be clear. I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see if Texas feels the need there, given the young guys they have on the come a little bit, as well as the potential of David Benda returning. Now, if David Benda doesn't return for whatever reason, and he hasn't went public with this, then I think it's a different conversation.
Absolutely.
I think then it's because, okay, they probably need a linebacker that has some already been there, done that, to add and allow Leonga Lafau a little bit more time to get some seasoning. All right. Also want to talk about Ben Yurosek, the tight end out of Stanford. We're still running traps on that to see if he's actually interested and involved with Texas as well. Holden Stays, the tight end out of Notre Dame that's committed to Tennessee, and Jordan Jolly, a tight end out of Connecticut, are other possible portal pieces that Texas may be on the lookout for here in 2024 as we run towards what really is a mid-January timeline for these guys to make decisions. Texas starts class, I believe, on January 16th, but you can add and drop classes, I believe, until the end of January. So theoretically, Texas has the rest of this month to try to figure things out for the spring portal. Right now, the Longhorns have 3 commitments in the junior college, or excuse me, in the transfer portal, 23 commitments in the high school ranks overall. So that's 26 new players already set to come in and join Texas in 2024. All right, last piece has to be Jahdae Barron, because that's kind of the one that has everyone on the edge of their seats right now. Frankly, whether Jahdae stays or goes is interesting. I'm being told that, well, I thought that Jahdae may get some time and see some time at safety in 2024. I'm being told that he actually wants to see some time and work at corner a little bit in 2024. So that would push him into the corner role. Maybe that gives them 4 corners. Maybe he starts at star, splits time with Andrew Makuba. Makuba pushes back. Whatever the case may be, okay, I'm excited about the opportunity here, because Jahdae Barron is a difference maker for Texas, because he all of a sudden makes them that much more senior in the secondary, going along with Andrew Makuba. That's 2 guys that are essentially 4-year starters for it.
I've pounded the drum for it for a while now. Having experience in your secondary is very important. And when you have 2 guys with the versatility and experience of Andrew Makuba and Jahdae Barron, it opens up, the realm of possibilities tenfold for the Texas defense. So a return for Texas with Jahdae Barron, not only is that important in the sense of leadership, locker room presence, and just a well-known, respected guy inside of Moncrief, but on the field itself, you're getting a guy that's always around the ball, very rarely out of position. And then 3, like you said, you can put him anywhere, basically. He's played snaps at cornerback against Kansas State. He had snaps back deep against Washington at safety. We obviously know what he can do at that star nickel position as well. The production doesn't drop off where you put Jahdae Barron on the field, and that's above anything else very encouraging. So should he return, the pairing of him and Makuba, very encouraging to me. If you throw him at cornerback, well, now you just have another big-time playmaker out wide. So I think that would be a massive win for the Texas staff if Jahdae Barron does return for 2024. Obviously, we'll have to await a decision, but that would clearly be something that the Texas staff is excited about no matter what.
We talked about this the other day, allowing players to develop on the right time frames instead of forcing them into action too early. That causes losses. It causes maybe not a linear path, a straight path to productivity on the field, too many ups and downs. That's not what Texas as a program wants to see, and it's not necessarily what's best for the individual player either. They need to be, it needs to be, they need to get a little bit, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. They don't need to be drinking out of a fire hose right away, right? Also, I want to mention this before we get going here. A lot of news today because of the transfer portal and NFL declarations. Trill Carter, the defensive lineman that signed with Texas last year out of Minnesota, CJ, he announced his intention to transfer to Auburn today for one post-grad year. That's not that big a surprise. Auburn, much closer to his home of South. He's from South Georgia. So that's really close for him. So congrats to Trill getting his degree and moving on.
Good spot.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, if Texas can get Caldwell, I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
No, that's in favor of the Longhorns. So it's actually not fair. But look, Texas has to win out on Caldwell to make this a good thing. All right, CJ, that's going to do it. Hey, you have anything else before we let people go?
I think it's interesting, Texas and Auburn giving a little, punch and jab back and forth on the recruiting trail as of late. So something fun to keep an eye on.
Yep, absolutely. CJ, or Blake Monroe of On Texas Football reporting earlier today that KJ Lacey, the quarterback out of Saraland in Mobile, is looking at Auburn, Alabama, A&M, Oregon. He's actually taking 2 visits to Texas in the next 3 weeks. He's the 2025 quarterback that is already committed to Texas, but has to kind of keep his options open because that's the way the world is. But he'll be in Austin 2 of the next 3 weeks. All right. For CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. That's been On Texas Football. Hook 'em.